Law Committee back into order. Members, before we begin testimony, I'd like to notify the audience that there will be members of the committee who will be exiting and entering the committee room today because there are other bills and other committees going on at the same time, and you should in no way consider this a reflection of how important they feel this bill is. So please be patient with members, and also note that they are listening to testimony, and if they're gone, that doesn't mean they don't care. They just have other bills to vote on. So beginning where we left off, the next testifier I have listed is Dale Carpenter.
Mr. Chair.
Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I forget, I want to request a roll call. And then are you taking comments at all right now, or are you going to wait until the testifiers are done?
I do intend to wait for committee member debate until after the testifiers have completed.
All right, very good. Thank you.
And after Mr. Dale Carpenter, who will be Grace Fink. After Grace Fink will be Pauline Nixon.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Representative Clark.
Mr. Carpenter doesn't wish to testify necessarily at this time. He's a resource that's available, but he doesn't want to make a statement at this particular time. Doesn't
okay,
need to do that.
Thank you. So the next testifier will be Grace Fink. Is Grace Fink here? Ms. Fink, please take a seat, state your name, and identify yourself for the record, and proceed with your testimony. Reminding members that testifiers are allotted 2 minutes. We will hold up a yellow card when you have 15 seconds left, and we will hold up a red card when your testimony should complete. Please respect that for the committee. Thank you. Please proceed.
Hello, my name is Grace Fink. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members, for allowing me to be here today. I am standing here because marriage between a man and a woman is extremely important to me. I would like to begin by asking you a question. What does a good and stable society mean? For me, a good and stable society is one that protects and encourages the people to live up to their fullest potential. When I look around at our society, I see certain social institutions which greatly impact us. For example, the government and military systems are both social institutions which serve the people in important ways. Keeping this in mind, we must not forget that marriage between a man and a woman is also a social institution. The United States Supreme Court has said that marriage is fundamental to the very existence and survival of the human race. This is why the government is involved in the marriage debate, because it is a time-tested institution which is of utmost importance to our society. Traditional marriage is the most pro-child institution ever created. Some of the benefits children receive from traditional marriage are reduced poverty and material hardship, increased likelihood of completing high school, college, and achieving high-status jobs, better physical health, less depression, fewer suicides, and increased likelihood of good relationships, and reduced rates of criminal behavior and child abuse. The overwhelming body of social science evidence establishes that children do best when raised by their married mother and father. Whether talking about poverty rates, physical and mental health, education attainment, or general happiness, science shows that children are better when raised in an intact home by their married parents. If we redefine marriage as genderless, what effect will this have on our children? What good architect would tweak the design of a major building before first testing the new design? The same goes for marriage. We cannot tweak the definition of marriage when the future generations are at stake. In conclusion, I would like to sincerely thank each and every one of you for listening to me today.
Thank you for your testimony, Ms. Fink. Next testifier, Pauline Nixon, followed by Pauline Nixon will be Annie Kopacek.
I have copies of my testimony.
The page will please distribute copies of Ms. Nixon's testimony.
Chairman Lesh, members of the Civil Law Committee, thank you for this opportunity to speak to you about House File 1054, the bill to allow same-gender marriage. My name is Pauline Nixon. My daughter, Dr. Andrea Nixon, is my middle child and a lesbian. In 2008, She and her partner of many years, Paula Lackey, eloped to San Francisco. Andrea's degree is in the administration of higher education. When she was finishing her doctoral degree, she was asked if she would like to design a position for herself in the dean's office at Carleton College, where she's worked for about 20 years. She agreed to do so and is now a lecturer and a researcher at Carleton. Prior to finishing her doctoral degree at the University of Minnesota, Andrea received a master's degree in computer science online from George Washington University. Sunday, 2 days ago, I asked Andrea what she thought I should say in my testimony today. She responded with 2 sentences. She was quite on target. She said, people want to be able to care for one another, and people need equal means to do that. That's exactly what you will be allowing if you pass House File 1054, and that's my request of you. Please pass House File 1054. Not everyone can afford to go halfway across the continent to get married, as Andrea and Paula did. Finally, something very important. Nothing in this bill prohibits any religious association, religious corporation, or religious society that is not organized for private property from taking any action with respect to the provision of goods, services, facilities, or accommodations directly related to the solemnization or celebration of a marriage that's in violation of its religious beliefs. And thank you very much for hearing me.
Thank you for your testimony, Ms. Nixon. Next testifier, Annie Kopacek. The next testifier after this will be Michael Bailey. Please introduce yourself for the record and proceed with your testimony.
My name is Annie Kopacek, and thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and committee members, for hearing me today. I am a recent University of St. Thomas graduate and founder of the Organization of Students for Marriage at the St. Thomas campus. I urge you, please do not redefine marriage because you think that the youth does not support marriage between one man and one woman. I assure you that I speak not only for so many St. Thomas students, but also for other countless young people who know how marriage, and specifically the distinct roles of both mothers and fathers within marriage, affects children and society. If you strip gender from the state's definition of marriage, you effectively say to me that within the context of marriage, my unique gift of self as a woman, as a potential wife and mother, have no difference in that of a man. It is precisely because I am a woman and I have a unique gift to offer the world as a woman that marriage cannot and should not be legally deemed genderless. As a young single woman hoping to one day raise a family, I implore you not to use public policy to, in effect, regard my feminine gift or another's masculine gift as interchangeable. Do not esteem the unique place of a mother or a father within family life as insignificant to my potential children and grandchildren. It is insulting to the very dignity of every one of us, regardless of marital state in life or sexual orientation, to erase any acknowledgement of our most basic contributions to the well-being and growth of our communities. It is vital to the flourishing of society that, when it comes to marriage, our laws reflect the dignity of our personhood as male and female, and in that way secure a more stable future for our children. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, Ms. Kopacek. Next testifier, Michael Bailey, followed by Brett Stevens.
Hello, I think I have an expanded version of my notes that I also think are being distributed.
Thank you. The page is distributing those now.
Thanks. And I also should note that I'm here representing Catholics for Marriage Equality Minnesota.
Please proceed with your testimony.
Thank you.
Did you introduce yourself for the record, Mr. Bailey?
No, my name is Michael Bailey, and I'm Executive Coordinator of Catholics for Marriage Equality, Minnesota.
Thank you. Please proceed.
I'm here in this capacity to take the opportunity to clarify the oft-quoted statement that the Catholic Church opposes same-sex marriage. This is only true if we limit the Church to its clerical leadership. In reality, however, this leadership does not encompass the totality of the Church, nor does it speak for all Catholics on this issue. Credible polls show that over 2/3 of Catholics support marriage equality. In fact, US Catholics support gay marriage by a larger margin than the general public. As a Catholic, I welcome this reality and its grounding in the best aspects of the Catholic faith and in the Catholic people's experience and acceptance of their gay children, siblings, parents, neighbours and co-workers. I take heart in the role that Catholics are playing so as to advance compassion and justice in our society. I want to assure you as lawmakers that the majority of Catholics do not support the Catholic hierarchy imposing its understanding of sexuality and marriage onto wider society. This is especially true when one acknowledges that the bishop's understanding of these realities is out of step with two important sources of truth in the Catholic tradition. They are the collective wisdom of the Catholic people and the insights provided by Catholic theologians. Catholics are not in theory opposed to the bishops making statements on important social issues, but we know that their speaking out should always seek to expand the circle of welcome and inclusion. This is not the case with their activism around marriage equality, and for many Catholics this is a source of pain and scandal. In conclusion, I want to assure you that the majority of Catholics would see the passing of marriage equality legislation as being in keeping with our Church's call for individuals and institutions to embody justice and compassion. The majority would support the passing of House File 1054. I hope you won't disappoint them. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Bailey. Next testifier, Brett Stevens, followed by Jacob Melson. Please introduce yourself and proceed with your testimony.
My name is Brett Stevens, and while I'm a columnist at Lavender Magazine, I am testifying solely as a private citizen. My partner Randy and I have been together for 15 years. We believe our relationship deserves recognition by the state of Minnesota. There are thousands of same-sex couples like us throughout the state, and the time has come for our state government to respect our lives and relationships. Let me explain what I mean. We organize and order our lives together just like straight married couples do. We plan our retirement, we take care of each other. If one goes to school, the other works more. If one stays home to take care of the children, the other may pick up another job to make ends meet. As a result, our financial lives are intertwined and our plans are joint. We need the state to recognize these realities. It is because this issue is so important and so compelling, we cannot wait and see if same-sex marriage will pass. The Minnesota poll that came out last week showed 53% of the public doesn't support same-sex marriage. Speaker Thiessen and Majority Leader Bach have both repeatedly said they doubt it can pass. It's time to believe them and face the truth. These past 4 months of interviewing people, studying polls, researching strategies, and the past histories of political movements has brought me to one conclusion. It is time for a compromise so our relationships get the recognition and the respect they deserve. We need someone to propose a civil union bill. I have talked with people for both sides of this issue for the past few months, and I've come to a realization. Reasonable people can disagree on this issue, and reasonable people can come to an agreement. There are those who believe marriage is only between a man and a woman. There are those who believe gender is irrelevant. I think the people of Minnesota are ready to say our relationships matter, but so do our traditions. Same-sex couples should be recognized, and we can do it with civil union legislation. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Stevens. Also, if the testifiers would please remember to sign in. The page is working diligently to ensure that all testifiers are on the record. That is the rules of the House and rules of this committee, so please do sign in before or after you testify. The next testifier is Jacob Melson, followed by Daniel Dobson. Mr. Melson. Daniel Dobson. Is Daniel Dobson here? Next testifier, Kirk Allen Dement. After Mr. Dement will be Neil Tao. Mr. Tao, you're after Mr. Dement. Have a seat. Make sure you sign in. Mr. Dement, please introduce yourself for the record and proceed with your testimony.
My name is Kirk Allen Dement, and I'd like to say that I've been following the conversations for the past 2 years and looking for a legitimate reason, a secular reason for why same-sex marriage would be denied. And what I found over the last 2 years is that it breaks down to 2 areas, children and society. So what I did is I looked at those organizations in our society that have unique expertise in the area of child development, human social systems, both past and present. And what I found to a T, these organizations, professional organizations, have come out in support of same-sex marriage or equal parenting rights for gay or lesbian couples. And I'd like to list some of these organizations that I found: the American Psychological Association, the American Psychiatric Association, American Sociological Association, the American Anthropological Association, the American Academy of Family Physicians, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, American Medical Association, the Child Welfare League of America, the North American Council on Adoptable Children. These groups are respected, authoritative groups in our society, and I could not find one group that had the comparable authority that opposed same-sex marriage. And this is really telling when people quote research, that these groups that are from the medical, psychological, psychiatric fields, etc., come out in support of same-sex marriage. I believe that if legislators cannot find a legitimate secular reason for denying same-sex marriage, which I am confident there is not one that has been presented, that you swiftly act to legalize same-sex marriage, because justice delayed is justice denied. And I'd also like to mention, too, when research is done, talked about in terms of traditional parenting, it's comparing kids to parents that traditional marriages with single-parent families and cohabitating heterosexual couples, and not same-sex couples. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Dement. Neil Tao.
Jean, Soksabai. Chào bạn, bonsoir tout le monde, and good evening, Mr. Chair, member of the committee. I'm Neil Tao, community leader from the Hmong community. I'm a professor at Metropolitan State University. I'm a father of 4 children. I'm here to testify to support this bill. Let me tell you that as an immigrant, a lot of them don't speak English well, but they too support my view that this is a good bill. Let me remind you, I was a refugee from Laos and a member of the Hill tribe named Hmong. A minority of the minority. I understand the term minority, disadvantage, disfranchised, and at times feel unwelcoming. So let me tell you that I'm very proud of Minnesota. Minnesota is the first state to elect a Hmong woman to office in 1991 for St. Paul Public School Board, Chua Lee. And of course, me more for Minnesota's first Hmong American state legislator in 2001. I want to make sure that Minnesota do not let behind a lot of Hmong men, a lot of Hmong and immigrant LGBT members for equal opportunity, equal protection, and fairness. This is a beautiful state. They give us, the immigrant, a lot of opportunity. I want to make sure that taxpayer, Hmong, or immigrant LGBT have the same protection, the same equality. We're here to build our life. We're here to enjoy our life. We're here to be a productive citizen. Thank you, Mr. Chair and member of the committee.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Tao. Next testifier will be Don Portwood. After Don Portwood will be August Berkshire. Please introduce yourself for the record and proceed with your testimony.
My name is Don Portwood. I was born and raised in a conservative farming community in Nebraska. My wife and I will be celebrating our 40th wedding anniversary in 2 months. I am pastor of Lyndale United Church of Christ in Minneapolis. In 2006, Lyndale Church was the first church in Minnesota to vote as a congregation to stop doing civil weddings. For the last 8 years, I've only done blessing ceremonies for straight and gay couples. I no longer participate in what I feel is an unjust policy of the state. So I no longer sign wedding licenses on behalf of the state. Instead, on behalf of my church, we bless all couples in the eyes of God. A straight couple has to get a wedding license at the county. If as a Christian or person of faith, you disagree with what we did, we should sit down and have a Bible study and talk about why we believe our decision was being faithful to the God we know through Jesus Christ. But that discussion of beliefs should not be taking place here. My hope would be that the state would legally wed people, issue licenses to all couples, and then if a couple wanted to have a blessing ceremony and knew a church, synagogue, or mosque that would bless them, they would do the religious ceremony. For the people who fear changing the tradition of marriage as they know it, I invite you to trust and open to the possibility that God's Spirit is moving today, just like it moved in the Apostle Peter in Acts 10, beyond the scripture, traditions, and understanding he'd grown up with. Same-gender couples are having blessing ceremonies, and they are having children. That will happen whether this law is passed or not. Being Nebraska raised, I think I'm pretty conservative. I'm for supporting monogamy. I'm for the state providing support in all the ways it does for all couples and their families, like my wife and our love and our commitment has been supported for nearly 40 years. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, Pastor Portwood. Next testifier, August Berkshire, followed by Simon Radecki. Please introduce yourself for the record and begin your testimony, Mr. Berkshire.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. My name is August Berkshire, and I'm here to represent Minnesota Atheists. We're the state's oldest, largest, and most active atheist organization. We view this as a matter of separation of church and state. It can be confusing because the same word, marriage, is used for both a civil contract and a religious ceremony. But we must keep in mind that these are two separate things. Today, you may hear testimony from some people saying that their God is in favor of same-sex marriage, and you may hear testimony from other people saying that their God is opposed to same-sex marriage. But fortunately, that's not a debate that you have to resolve. Government laws must have a secular basis. The best secular arguments in favor of same-sex marriage are the 14th Amendment's guarantee of equal protection under the law, and the fact that long-term relationships, whether they're gay or straight, help to stabilize society. In our opinion, there are no secular arguments against same-sex marriage that hold up to scrutiny. Many of these arguments were used 50 years ago to oppose interracial marriage. I'd like to end on a personal note. My partner, Rachel, and I are heterosexuals, and we've been together for 17 years. We're both atheists, so we won't be getting married in a church or synagogue or temple or mosque. Instead, we'll seek a judge to perform a civil marriage ceremony. However, we won't get married until it's legal for everyone. Because how can we stand up in front of our family and friends, some of whom happen to be gay, on what is supposed to be the happiest day of our lives, knowing that that happiness is not available to them as well? So please pass this pro-marriage bill and make civil marriage available to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Berkshire. Simon Radecki. Next testifier after Simon Radecki will be Jenny Haigh.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I'm Simon Radecki. I'd like to say that all the way up one side of my family tree, they voted conservative Republican every year. On my other side of the family tree, they voted half conservative Republican every year. But for some reason, my non-biological mother had to every day make sure that as she was going to work that she had power of attorney and everything on her person, so that if the worst happened, that she would be able to go into the hospital and take care of my brother and I. I was overjoyed this past election cycle, but I was more overjoyed this Thanksgiving. We go to my ancestral home, you could say, in Indiana, where my grandfather lives, and he had some new neighbors over. We had a big Thanksgiving dinner like we usually do, and he invited the new neighbors over to dinner. And for the first time in my life, my biological mother introduced Lee, my other mother, as her wife. And for me, that was an extremely powerful experience, because it's the culmination of a relationship that has existed for 25 years. They put 2 kids through college, and they provided for us with the loving care and commitment and long-term relationship that many heterosexual couples enjoy. I am extremely fortunate to have been raised in a community that was very accepting, was very friendly, and I'd like to say on behalf of all those younger than me, or those that live in communities that are not so accepting, those kids would really, really appreciate the passage of this bill. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Radecki. Next testifier, Jenny Haigh, followed by Bob Minton.
Mr. Chair and members of the committee, thank you for allowing me to share my story. My name is Jenny Haigh, and I live in St. Paul with my partner Aileen and our family, and we live in the same neighborhood, the Catholic neighborhood that I grew up in. In 2009, I was diagnosed with a rare form of bone cancer. My son was 3, and Aileen, a law student. I found myself in a halo, unable to work or care for my own basic needs, such as combing my hair or bathing. I had 2 10-hour surgeries, radiation therapy in Boston, nearly a year of therapy and a feeding tube, and a neck rebuilt out of titanium. During this time, Aileen was a full-time law student and amazing caretaker to my son and I. I remember her writing her long paper on a rolling table in the hospital next to me and sleeping on a folding chair in the ICU. Family and friends showed their support by cooking meals, babysitting, cleaning, and even offering their homes to us. The Minnesotan values of supporting family and treating each other with respect were practiced daily, and these are values that are consistent with this bill. Aileen and I have taken precautions to protect our family in case I'm not here to do the protecting myself. Unfortunately, a will, a trust, and a healthcare directive don't offer the same protections as marriage. Many of you here, like me, have probably spent nights awake worrying about your kids or loved ones. Legal rights are not going to solve all of our worries, but they offer a structure that we can rely on when the goodwill of others is not enough in the face of the law. Marriage equality recognizes that the commitment, the love, and the struggles my family have faced are similar to yours and your families, and we deserve the same support. Please choose marriage equality for all families. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your testimony, Ms. Haigh. Next testifier is Bob Minton, followed by Richard Painter.
Mr. Chair and members of the committee, my name is Bob Minton, and I'm chair of Former Priests for Marriage Equality. Last year, on May 17th, our group released a statement to the media opposing that proposed marriage amendment. Upon release, that statement had signatures of 80 former priests. And after the release, we gathered more names for a total of 103 names. This year, we have a follow-up statement that has been emailed to you, and I guess it's distributed also out to you. This statement supports legislation that affords everyone the same benefits, rights, and duties when they contract marriage in the state of Minnesota. 82 former priests from Minnesota signed this statement, and collectively, they devoted more than 1,000 years of service to their church. We support this bill, and we are pleased that it does not infringe on the rights of some churches or members of the clergy to deny their marriage rights to same-sex couples. Our fellow former priests found arguments against this bill wanting and unconvincing. And as our statement proclaims, we believe that state law should allow every individual the freedom to marry the person he or she loves. To that end, we, 82 former priests, call upon all members of the Minnesota House and Senate to pass this legislation during this current session. Mr. Chair and members of the committee, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Minton. Next testifier, Richard Painter, followed by Anthony Newby. I'm sorry, Christine Lindblom will be the next testifier after Mr. Painter. Go ahead, Mr. Painter. Please introduce yourself for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I thank you for inviting me to testify here today. 6 years ago, my wife and I moved here to Minnesota with our 3 children. We live in Edina. I moved here after finishing 2.5 years of service as the chief White House ethics lawyer and associate counsel to the president for President George W. Bush. I was thrilled last week to help found an organization called Republicans United for Freedom, and I will be chairing that organization starting this week. Republicans United for Freedom is committed to the ideals that we believe have been held by the Republican Party for many years, from the first Republican president, Abraham Lincoln, to the last Republican vice president, Richard Cheney. And in Mr. Cheney's words, freedom means freedom for everyone. And that is what this bill is all about. The freedom to marry should be available for everyone. There are certain things that are none of the government's business, and I would be happy to list other things in other testimony. But who you marry is certainly none of the government's business. This is a matter to be resolved between loving individuals and their churches, their synagogues, their community. It is not a matter for the government to decide who is entitled to love who. And this bill should pass. It is the right thing to do. I have signed on to a brief submitted to the United States Supreme Court with 130 other Republicans, including Clint Eastwood, and also some of my former colleagues from the White House, urging marriage equality. And let me just say one thing about religious freedom. I was active in the White House Christian Fellowship when I was there in Washington. I'm a member of the Episcopal Church, and I want to ask you, what about our religious freedom, those of us who belong to denominations that want to celebrate same-sex marriages? Is that being recognized in the state? Please pass this bill.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Painter. Next testifier, Kirsten Lindblom.
Good evening. Thank you, Chairman Lesch and members of the committee. My name is Kirsten Lindblom. 5 years ago in a little church in Austin, Minnesota, in front of 140 members of our family and friends, my partner Ginny and I made a lifelong commitment to one another. We decided that we wanted to make that public declaration of love, even though the state would not recognize it. At the time, we talked a lot about the options, but we felt that we wanted to have a ceremony in our community, in the space and place that we live and that we work. From that day, the hope has been that the state would one day make it possible for us and thousands of other couples to become legally married. 3 years ago, my Ginny was diagnosed with cancer. It's the slow-growing and deadly kind. She's beating the odds. She's pushing back the clock, but every day she's fighting for time. During the height of her illness, our marriage hope disappeared. In November 2012, we celebrated the passing of Ginny's expected expiration date and the defeat of the marriage amendment. Ginny continues to fight, and with the shift in Minnesota's political climate, our marriage hope has returned. As a woman facing the loss of her wife, I'm compelled. I am driven and I am determined to make the dreams that she dreams come true, and our one-day marriage is one of those dreams. Even though she's pushing back the clock, eventually cancer will take my wife. I have a student who wears a t-shirt that says that love holds no bounds, and I agree. But the greatest expression of love, marriage, is being held in bondage. It is bound, and you have the power to release it. You have the power to make Ginny's dream come true, and that's something that I so wish that I had. What a gift you hold. Please, send the Freedom to Marry bill to vote for my Ginny, for me, and for the thousands upon thousands of others who long to see their marriage dreams come true. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony, Ms. Lindblom. Members, that concludes the names on the list for public testimony on House File 1054 as amended. This is now the time for discussion among committee members. After all the testimony is exhausted, after all the comments from members of the